So many of you know, a couple of weeks ago we talked about the environment and being engaged in the environment, and I talked about the birds I was not going to get to know on my front porch because it ends kind of tragically every year. Well, I got to tell you, this year we're having a little more luck than we have in the past years. David Bradley, they're all still there. As of this morning, it looks like they're getting ready to take flight, but remember, I don't care. I don't care. Now, the one thing that's so interesting to me is I don't care so much. I figured out they're finches. And I've also figured out that there have been two birds and sometimes three birds hanging out at this one nest. Two females and a male. And they're each taking their turns taking care of these three little babies. I think that's a perfect image for this Mother's Day morning. Because, we sometimes think mother is a role, but actually mothering is a verb, right? Mothering is a verb, caring for others. It's an action, and it's something you do. And if only we could do it the way the finches do it. I mean, it's simply amazing. They're all making their way in. They're all feeding them on a regular basis. And remember, I just don't care, but it's really happening in profound ways. I think that's a beautiful image for all of us. The Bible tells us, as a mother comforts her child, so will I comfort you. So will Jesus comfort me. So shall the Spirit comfort us, as a mother comforts a child. I think that's a beautiful image. Throughout the Bible, we don't have to look very far to see that children have a very special place in Jesus' heart. And over again, he's saying, let kids come to me. Don't get in their way. He's saying, you better take care of these. That's how God wants to take care of you. But if you don't take care of these, God's not going to be very happy. So caring for children is central to who Jesus is. And it's not a role for just a female. We're all called to feed children. We're all called to care for children. We're all called to provide home for children. Marcy said she wasn't a mother, but she has 5 little people in her life, her godsons, are there 5? 4. That she mothers, that she cares for. See, we're all called, we all have that nurturing aspect. I love that song that Mike sang. Sometimes we get confused. We think that's about fathers, but it's both about fathers nurturing and caring for their daughters so that they become good mothers. So that's one part of the cycle. But then there's another interesting part of the cycle as well. It's when mothers grow older, right? And there was a guy here in town who did a great job of celebrating his mother on a regular basis. I was so disappointed when David Letterman retired, not because of David Letterman, but because I wouldn't be able to see Dorothy anymore, right? There's a great video here that we want to be mindful of just how much David Letterman loved his mother and included him in his life. Let's take a look at this. Isn't that amazing? Her funeral was actually at Second Press, and I remember it well. I also remember once flying to New York City, where there she was on that cheap flight that you can get to New York City on Southwest, sitting in a regular seat like anybody else. And I have to tell you, I would have loved to have talked to her, but the line of people waiting to talk to Dorothy in the regular seating was overwhelming. Why? Because David Letterman loved his mother so much and shared her with all of us that we all felt close to her in some way or another. As many of you know, I did a chaplaincy unit. I complained about it for the whole time. It's over now. And part of that chaplaincy unit was to make your way to the nurseries and to meet with the new mothers and say, oh, we're so happy for you, and to offer a prayer or whatnot. And that was really exciting. But I was equally excited when I would end up on a different floor with people who were with their aging parents, sons and daughters, who would spend time with their parents, not only caring for them in a child way, but really concerned really taking the role of, I want to find out what's going on, many of them staying overnight, many of them being right there and caring for their mothers very much the same way those mothers must have cared for them. I was most touched when I met one lady who had entered into hospice. And the woman that was with her, I just assumed was the daughter for a couple of days. The third day I went in and I said, so tell me a little bit about your mom. And she said, oh, this isn't my mom. This isn't my mom. And I said, really, it isn't? She said, no, she was my best friend's mother, and my best friend died 18 months ago of breast cancer. This friend was so touched by the love of this mother growing up that she then took on that role in that mother's death and helped escort her into life eternal, where she once again met her daughter. That is a beautiful image for me of how it is that we are all called to mother and care for one another in the wholeness of life. I witnessed this as well this past year at the garden when Renee Arnett, our dear Renee, passed away. Do you know, once we realized that she was dying and was in hospice, through the love and mothering of the garden, she was never alone. She was always with someone. She called herself the Flying Shepherdess because she used to hang out up there and help get the cameras ready at the beginning of the day. And she used to say, I used to look out over that crowd and I used to pray for all of you before the service started, and I would pray for you throughout the week. It's as if those prayers fell upon us in amazing ways that when it came down to it, we knew that we would continue to miss her physical presence, but she continues to live on as the mother of the garden. Just as Jesus loved and cared for children, he also loved his mother as well. In fact, his last act on this earth was to take care of his mother. Jesus saw his mother and the disciple he loved standing by her. This is when he is on the cross. And he said to his mother, "Woman, here is your son." Then to the disciple, "Here is your mother." From that moment, the disciple accepted her as his own mother. That image came to mind when I saw that woman who was with the woman who was dying. That image comes to mind when I think about Renee and the peace she found in this community, because we all took her on as our mother. Today is not about a role. Today is about a way of being. You don't have to be a woman to feed children. You just have to be a person who cares. You don't have to be the blood daughter of someone to walk the journey of life, this life and the life to come. You need only have the love and the time and the ability to be present with them. Yes, indeed, life is a circle, and we are all called to share in it. We are all called to share, to mother and to care for one another. Every year since the 1930s, I have shared in a story called Love You Forever at every church I've ever been. I wasn't born in the 1930s, you guys. Come on, giggle a little bit. My mother was born in the 1930s. And it's a tradition that we keep going. It's a story by a guy named Robert Munsch, who actually wrote it after his own twin sons died. And it's a story about the love of a mother and a love of a son. And it goes kind of like this. A new mother holds her brand new baby boy, and she gently rocks him back and forth and back and forth. And as she does, she sings, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always. As long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." Well, that little boy, that baby boy, he grows and he grows until he is 2 years old. And well, he crawls around the house and gets into everything. He pulls the books off the shelf. He takes the food out of the refrigerator. He even flushed his mother's watch down the toilet. His mother used to say, "This kid is driving me crazy." But you know, at night when that 2-year-old was sleeping, His mother would go to his room, open the door, crawl across the floor, look up over the side of the bed, and if that 2-year-old was really sleeping, she'd lift him up into her arms and she'd gently rock him back and forth, and as she did, she sang, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." Well, that boy, he grew and he grew and he grew until he was 9 years old. And well, he never wanted to take a bath. He never wanted to come in for dinner. And when his grandmother came to visit, he said bad words. But sometimes, in the darkest of nights, oftentimes when the mother was still a little upset with him, she would go to his room, open the door, crawl across the floor, look up over the side of the bed, and if that 9-year-old boy was really asleep, she'd lift him up into her arms, and she would gently rock him back and forth and back and forth. And as she did, she sang, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." Well, that 9-year-old, he grew and he grew and he grew until he was a teenager. And he listened to very strange music. And he never had his cell phone out of his hand. And he had very strange friends. At times his mother would say, "I feel like I live in a zoo." But at night, when that teenage boy was asleep, his mother would go to his room, crawl across the floor, look up over the side of the bed, and if that teenage boy was really asleep, she'd lift him up into her arms, and she'd gently rock him back and forth and back and forth. And as she did, she sang, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." Well, that boy, he grew and he grew and he grew until he was a man. And yes, it does happen, friends. Your kids do move away. And he did. He moved out of the house and he moved into a house across town. But do you know sometimes, on the very darkest of nights, his mother would get into her car, drive across town, look up, and if the light was off, she'd go climb into the window, crawl across the bed, look up over the side of the bed, crawl across the room, look up over the side of the bed, and if that man was really asleep, she would lift him up into her arms. And she would gently rock him back and forth and back and forth, and as she did, she sang, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." Well, that mother, she grew older and older and older, until one day she called her son on the telephone and said, "You need to come and see me because I am very sick and I am very old." So the boy went to see his mother, and as he was approaching the front door, she became so excited to see him that she began to sing, "I'll love you for, I'll. But she couldn't remember the words because she was very sick and she was very old. So do you know what that grown boy man did? He came to the door. He lifted up his mother into his arms and he gently rocked her back and forth and back and forth. And as he did, he sang, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my mommy you'll be." That night, when that grown man returned home, he stood at the top of the stairs for a very long time. Then he opened the door to his new baby girl's room, and he lifted her up into his arms, and he gently rocked her back and forth and back and forth. And as he did, he sang, "I'll love you forever, I'll like you for always, as long as I'm living, my baby you'll be." Amen.